In today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about some of the most difficult parts of our job as engineers, as managers, as leaders. I want to share a vulnerable event that occurred in our lives. Last week, my wife ended her tenure at her role in the startup that she was working in. And she is like many who are listening to this podcast right now. And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of concern that the industry is changing, that what we used to bring to the table may lose its value, that the skills that we've fought so hard to learn, that we've practiced and refined over the years, that those skills are going to become less valuable, that they're going to be replaced or somehow will not be in demand any longer. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you how the industry will change. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. But what I can do is give you the best advice that I've heard, and it applies to everyone, every job, especially those that are in knowledge working roles. Okay, this advice is the best advice that I've heard for combating these kinds of issues. Whether your job is being threatened by some form of AI, some kind of LLM. Maybe your job is being threatened by layoffs. Maybe the company is just trying to save money, or maybe the requirements of the role are shifting. Some skill set that you don't necessarily have. The advice that I have for you should help prevent more of those situations. Before I go any further, I do want to say that we are doing just fine. For anybody who would be concerned for us, for our family, for any reason, we're going to be perfectly fine. But I know that that's not necessarily true for everyone who's listening to this. Okay, so I hope that you will take what we're saying to heart here, but also know that we have deep empathy for you in your situation. If you want to talk about anything, if you want to talk about your job situation, if you want to get advice from other engineers, the Developer T Discord is a good place to do that. developerd.com/Discord. I'm in there. You can directly message me on Discord, and I will do my best to get back to you. This is one of the more volatile times in my working life that I've seen in the job market. And so I believe this advice that I'm going to give you today is perhaps more appropriate than ever. The advice is not groundbreaking. You probably have heard this advice before, but hopefully we're going to give it a little bit of a different framing in today's episode than you've heard it put in a different frame than what you've heard this put in before. And here's the advice, okay? We, most of the time in our careers, have been rewarded for our skill development, okay? So think about this as, the thing that we end up getting our dopamine reward for. We learn a new skill, and therefore those skills are marketable, and we can pick up a new job because we can do a new thing. Right? So think about this as the early days when you were a software engineer and you develop skills. Maybe you learned a coding language. Maybe you learned how to design. Maybe you're heavily knowledgeable about a particular subject matter. And you wielded this in order to get jobs. And so our resumes are littered with these skill areas, right? They're littered with long lists of buzzwords very often. But I want you to shift your focus from skills to ownership and responsibility. Shift away from skills and towards ownership and responsibility. Now, am I saying that skills are no longer necessary? Not directly. Okay, that certainly is not an assertion I'm going to make right now. But as we see skills become a more fluid commodity, okay, this means that instead of directly writing every line of code, what we're going to see most likely as AI continues to advance, we will see that the person that is responsible for that code, right, that will be the valuable hire, somebody who knows how to take responsibility. Now, very often, in order to take responsibility for that, you do also need the skill set, right? In other words, you either need to be able to do the thing yourself so that when you are supervising the thing being done, whether that's by another person, maybe it's outsourced, maybe it's a collaboration with a machine, whatever is doing the work, you can take responsibility for it. You're able to verify it, right? But that's not a strict requirement for responsibility. Taking responsibility for something does not necessarily mean that you are delivering it. It means that you are willing to put yourself as the accountable person. You are taking responsibility because you know how to achieve whatever it is that needs to be achieved, or you're willing to take the risk of figuring it out. So the skill itself may not necessarily come to bear. You may be able to outsource that skill to something else. And you may need to import skills that you don't necessarily have yourself. Now, again, I should be clear. I don't believe that all skills are, easily exported to a machine. I don't buy into that narrative currently. I do believe that many of our skills are augmented pretty significantly, right? Pretty significantly by the advances in artificial intelligence. And we have to reckon with what that means. Regardless of how you feel about that reality, we do need to reckon with it in order to figure out what to do next, right? So what I'm recommending for you to do is to confront that reality, okay, and try to figure out what exactly is valuable in your human agency. What is hard to replace? What is difficult to outsource, to export? Responsibility is difficult to export. The human ability to judge whether something has succeeded or not, to set goals, to set direction, a lot of that stuff is difficult to export. Certainly, the ability to listen to multiple inputs and translate those into action. But ultimately, the most difficult thing to export, the most difficult thing to outsource is ownership and responsibility. You could try to hold, let's say, an AI coding assistant accountable. You could try to hold them to some level of ownership. But at the end of the day, if the quality of the code that is written by the LLM is not very good, it's extremely unlikely that you have a clear escalation path, right? That you can hold the LLM accountable. What it would take is doing the work again, doing it over. At some point, a human in this loop is critical. It's critical because the human will take ownership. They will take responsibility for finishing the job. Okay, so this is a little bit abstract. How do we make this practical? In your next one-on-one with your manager, drive the conversation towards where your responsibility, accountability, and ownership can grow. Where can you expand the scope of those things? Instead of just focusing on what technical training or tutorial or what kind of tech tool you could add to your portfolio. None of those things are necessarily bad, but focus instead on where can you increase the number of things that you are personally held accountable to. This is where you will build a sense of trust that you are reliable and able to get things done. Those qualities extend beyond your skill set. Right? Those qualities are going to be the kinds of things that you're looking for in up-leveling your engineering organization. And they're going to become more and more important, right? As our skills become more fluid, those qualities of accountability, of ownership, of responsibility, those behaviors will become kind of core behaviors of a good engineer. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Developer Tea. I understand that this might feel like a somber moment in the industry, but I know the people that are listening to this show that you care about your career. I know that you care about doing the next best thing that you can, about becoming a little bit better today than you were yesterday, and the same tomorrow. And I believe that if you keep pushing towards the things that you care about, towards your values, towards seeking perspective and seeking purpose, that will ultimately lead to more of what you want in your life. I won't even say necessarily career success, because that's not always everybody's ultimate goal, right? But if you're seeking clarity, perspective, and purpose in your career, then I feel very strongly that those pursuits will continue to pay you back. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Developer Tea. Again, if you need support, if you are looking in your journey as an engineer, if you're looking for other engineers to discuss things with, to talk about the industry, to ask questions of, join us on the Developer Tea Discord community. That's at developertea.com/Discord. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, enjoy your tea.